Okay, good morning, afternoon, evening, whatever it is, and a very, very warm welcome to this session on local action. And I think that it is fair to say that this COP sets a new record as regards the visibility of city action among the EU side events and beyond. And I think this shows that this voluntary collective action has become a make or break factor to climate neutrality in the EU. And this morning, you may have seen the Global Covenant of Mayors receiving a prize for humanity from the Gulbenkian Foundation, joining Greta Thunberg in this selected group of prized people and initiatives. And now what we will be hearing is from Antwerp, Warsaw, Glasgow, and Paris, in the European Covenant, in the core of the Global Covenant of Mayors, how they will mobilize collective action to make life safer, more sustainable, and simply better in their communities. And that's actually what climate neutrality by 2050 is all about, and the Green Deal strategy that is aiming at. My name is Eero Ailio. I work at the European Commission Energy Department and will be chairing this event. And what you will be hearing here is a discussion that will draw on the experiences of these 4 cities on different collective initiatives. There's going to be first one dealing with the Covenant of Mayors and its recommitment campaign for climate neutral cities by 2050. Then there will be a coalition on the willing on decarbonization of buildings, very important activity. We are going to be discussing also about the movement of cities implementing nature-based solutions, and also a series of principles for just and sustainable cities. And as you see here, this session combines climate, energy, environment, and social fairness all together. So there's really no space for silos at the city level, and the logic here is indeed to encourage municipal and urban actors to make full use of these kinds of initiatives and the power they have to turn the cities attractive and future-proof places to live. So now I will present to you the speakers. We will have some questions to all of them, and there will be also, after a round of questions, we will have a possibility for you in the audience to ask questions, put them in the chat, and we will take them at the end of the at the later part of the event. So the speakers, our first speaker is going to be Mayor Alan Coliban, who has served as the mayor of Brașov in Romania since 2020, and he has experience as the president of the Senate Environment Committee and vice president of the Transport and Infrastructure Committee. So today his intervention will be focusing on Brașov's role in the Covenant of Mayors, and in particularly in the recommitting the city towards the 2050 climate neutrality target. So after that, I will turn to Mrs. Julian Dick, who is a spatial planning manager for Glasgow City Council at the UK and an expert on nature-based solutions. So then she will be exploring how collective action for nature-based solutions can aid cities in making use of these solutions to reach climate neutrality. And we will be then also going after that to our 4th speaker, who is Tom Meus, the vice mayor for the city of Antwerp in Belgium. And he's also the alderman for social affairs, poverty reduction, social economy, environment, and honorary services. And he's working closely with the city network ICLEI on their social justice and equity work, including championing an upcoming collective initiative that ICLEI is spearheading to help cities ensure that they're both just and sustainable. And last and but certainly not least, we will have Yann-Françoise, the head of climate, energy and circular economy strategies for the city of Paris in France. And in his role, he's very engaged in decarbonization as a path to climate neutrality. And many Parisian organizations are pushing this work forward through involvement in a collective coalition of the willing on decarbonizing buildings. So this is our speaker lineup. And what I will now do is to actually give the floor then to Mayor Alan Coliban. I just hope that he is on live. Are you there? I'm not quite sure I see.
Hi, Eero. Mayor Coliban is joining us, but unfortunately is running just 2 minutes late. So his staffer is with us here and he will join us in a moment. So perhaps we can come back to him.
Okay, well then, no problem.
Thank you.
So then I suggest that we start with Ms. Julian Dick. And the first question comes here. All of you have been asked to share your insights on because of the experiences that you've collected in not just committing, but actually delivering on ambitious action and working with peer cities through these kinds of collective initiatives. So could you, Julian, could you share some examples of how such peer support in these collective initiatives has actually led to new measures and action in your city? And then if you like, also, what kind of barriers have you faced in reaching climate neutrality? And how have these kinds of collective initiatives helped you address these? And I'd like you to stick to about 7 minutes if you can.
Okay, thanks, Eero. I'll talk to you about our role in the Horizon 2020 Connecting Nature project. It was one of the first nature-based solution funded back in 2016. We got funded, we started in 2017 and we end in May next year. 5 years flies by just like that. What we ended up doing, the kind of way the collective was put together, it's 11 cities across Europe. They had the academics and partners who were pulling that together had an idea that 3 of the cities in Europe, namely Poznan in Poland, Genk, G-E-N-K, Genk in Belgium, and Glasgow might be ahead of the curve, that we might be doing things that other cities could learn from. And they wanted to look at what we were doing and look at how we could mainstream nature-based solutions. So move from the talk about net zero, better biodiversity, and all the things that kind of get put into silos and try and look at a more holistic way of doing it. When we looked at it, we had to come up with examples, and Poznan started saying, well, we'll look at our small pocket parks and the greening the grey, at which point I had to put a line through our Stalled Spaces project in Glasgow and say, I can't do that. And then Genk said, well, we'll do the Steamer Valley. That's a wetland park, it's reclaiming the land. So I had to put a line through the 7 lochs in Glasgow. So that went from the small to the medium, which meant that Glasgow ended up saying, okay, we'll look at the bigger picture. We'll use our open space strategy and we'll look at how we use a statutory planning document that's about the asset management of the spaces between buildings and how can we mainstream nature-based solutions in that. The project then challenged us all to understand what we were doing and look at helping us to have better conversations, not only amongst ourselves, but with the other cities and with communities. So they looked at, did we have a framework? Did we understand how we were governing things? Did we have space to step back and reflect on what we were doing, so learn from our mistakes? Had we worked out how we were going to finance things? Had we worked out what we were going to deliver? Had we worked out how we were going to measure the impact? First thing they found was we were all very good at planning and delivery, but nobody was very good at the stewardship. We all kind of could get money, pockets of money, buckets of money to do the planning and the delivery. And then we'd all stand back, we'd cut a ribbon, an appropriate mayor would turn up and go, look at what we've done. And then we'd all keep our fingers crossed and hope to the best that we could then maintain it or we could work with the community. We weren't measuring the impact properly. So when people asked us to provide evidence for projects, we were bundling together a whole lot of evidence and going, that's why we want to do the project. Then we were forgetting about it for 7 or 8 years. And then when they said, what was your impact? We go and monitor it again. So we've worked collectively across the cities to identify that impact assessment, to identify the spatial data. So what we discovered is that a lot of the information was written in reports, it was on Excel spreadsheets, it was on PDFs, it was in dusty books written 100 years ago, it was on lovely drawings, but none of it was put into a GIS environment where you could interrogate it and you could ask the map, and that somebody could use it without knowing that the health service had collected that data or the environmental department had collected that data. It was just the data about the city, and you could tell a story about space. It's also the kind of, what it did was prove to us that there was a gap in that lived experience data. So you could collect quantity, but you couldn't collect quality. So to kind of round it up and go to where the issues are, the issues were people didn't know the information that was there, who was holding it. There was a lot of duplication across Europe. So what we've been trying to do is map that, where to find the data. So we did a bit within Connecting Nature and came up with a guidebook about impact assessment, and that then fed into the EU nature-based assessment, impact assessment guidebook that has 156 different data sets that you could collect. What we also did was look at how you could have a conversation with communities about financing projects and actually the long-term stewardship. So the problems, or the knotty problems at the minute, is finding the data and being able to ask the map. The long-term stewardship, so the long-term looking after the things once you put them in, and actually making the climate adapted stuff a positive asset on the books. Because unlike bridges and buildings, we seem to start from a negative asset, that it's a financial liability. So we don't put a real value on it. Hopefully that kind of gives you a feel for it, but we wouldn't have got to those issues unless we'd worked collaboratively and collectively and understood that it was a problem that we were sharing with a lot of other cities.
Thank you, Julian. I think this was really a great presentation on how you did things in practice and connecting these different ideas from the cities and very, very concrete things. I mean, this is really excellent material, and somehow clicks on these topics about discussion about data, and then the project management related issues, also how to go from project management to a bit like a more holistic approach, which is what you understand. I think that's really, really valuable. Thank you so much. Now I wonder if Mayor Caliban has joined us in the meantime, or should we move forward? I think probably not yet. So then if that's not the case, so then what I would do is, can I give the, oh yes.
Hi.
No, hi.
I'm not Mayor Caliban.
Yeah, I can see that.
My name is Sorina Baldeanu. I don't know why my name or the mayor's name is appearing on my account. Okay. From what I understand from his cabinet, he's still in the discussion.
Okay.
That's
all right.
Yeah, well, it just appeared. Evidently, it's a very important one. So I'm really sorry for his not being able to take part into this. I'm still waiting for an answer from him. I've written to him. Okay.
But what we will do is we will go ahead and then perhaps at the end of the event, so we will give him a floor. So with great pleasure if he joins us. Thank you. Okay, well then I suggest that we go to Vice Mayor Tom Meus from Antwerp, and I would like to ask Tom about another aspect. Actually, we have, each of these initiatives that we've been that I listed earlier today. So some of them relate to buildings, others to nature-based solutions, what Kilian was saying, energy, and so on. So they tackle not just the environment, but also social challenges and well-being. And on this point, I think it would be great to hear from you how integrating these kinds of social and environmental efforts help us enable, take us closer to the EU's climate neutrality targets. So if you can mention what your experiences are on that, and then also have you came across some trade-offs that we should pay attention to, so are there some conflicts between these types of objectives?
Okay, thank you, and good afternoon to everyone. As the Covenant of Mayors got a prize this morning, I'm very proud because thanks to the Covenant of Mayors, the city of Antwerp reached its CO2 reduction goals. Compared to 2005, we reached our 20% reduction goal. In 2019, in fact, we had a reduction of 25%. That's thanks to the Covenant of Mayor and the ongoing pressure there, but also the network of the cities which we are in participating in. So to answer the question, it's quite simple. If we want a just transition, a just climate transition, then we can't leave anyone behind. And in cities, we are facing a particular problem. That is talking about the building stock. A growing number of people, of citizens, of inhabitants of cities, they don't own their house. They live in privately owned house, but privately owned by another one, by landlords. In my city, for example, in Antwerp, 70% of the Antwerp population lives in apartment blocks, and 60% of all Antwerp people, they are renting a house. And so one big barrier or trade-off, as you called it, we are facing, and we have to solve that if we want a just transition, is to solve the problem of the split ownership. The split ownership, where people can't afford and don't have any interest in investing in eco-renovation, in energy efficiency in their house, because, of course, they have to fund it, but the benefits are for someone else, for the landlord. So we have really to tackle the tenant-landlord dilemma. How do we do that in Antwerp? Well, we do that in creating a one-stop shop for households, and especially for the vulnerable households, where you offer all city services on sustainability, sustainable building and living. So that includes focusing on subsidies that we can deliver, loans and grants that we can deliver in order to sustainable retrofit houses. But at the same time, as an extra on that dedicated policy, we have a special program in order to renovate the apartment blocks where at least 20 households live together. So we're trying to convince the community of landlord owners there to invest, and it's a no-brainer to do that, but it's a stress brainer for a lot of people that live in those apartment blocks, because they kind of feel powerless, because they can't do anything if they do not cooperate with one each other. And so they learn to know their neighbors, but not always in a good way, because you have to invest a lot of euros, $1 million euros sometimes, in big apartment blocks. And so we tried, as a city, we try to put people together. We invest and we finance what we call the master plans after an eco analysis of the whole block. And then we try to convince those people with loans and grants to invest in their apartment blocks. For the vulnerable people themselves, we run on a yearly basis 2,000 energy scans in vulnerable households, scans where we try to give them a free package of energy saving materials, as there are LED lamps, energy saving, shower heads, radiator foil. So we deliver that for free. And then we try to look, there's a liberal energy market in Belgium. And so we try to look, for example, for cheaper energy suppliers. So we distress them and we do that kind of work for them. So what have we learned is climate change and climate change measures often dive deeply into technical matters or, in politically spoken, into dogmas. But so what we neglect, and what we may not neglect any further, is we have to look at the behavior of people and behavioral change of people. And cities itself and public authorities have to invest in that kind of programs. If I may, one of our biggest pledges, also with the ICLE partnership, and we will come up with just principles for climate transition in the month of January. But one of our big pledges is we're fully ahead with the new beefed up energy policies of the EU Commission, and with the proposed inclusion of heating fuels in the emission trading scheme. But if the Commission will do that, and we hope they will do that, that may not lead to increased energy poverty, because they are the most vulnerable. That if we don't add additional policy, that will pay the bill. And so what we are pleading for is, for example, and that's a very, very anecdotic but very important example of putting those principles in practice, is that the revenues that will come from the new emission allowances should be accessible to local governments to finance investments in local renewable energy communities, accessible for all, and especially for the most vulnerable. And in that ICLE network, we are now, regarding to the different experiments that we have, we are now trying to put those just principles in very, very, very concrete examples, how to lead as public authority, as public cities, very approximate to the vulnerable households, and to invest directly in their interests.
Thank you, Tom. I think this was also very concrete. You are pulling together really these kinds of concrete issues that we've discussed many times, and I used to personally work a lot on energy poverty when we were making the previous legislation. And there's one message just to your last point about heating and cooling and the ETS and the renewable energy community. So I think we have quite a good news in a way to share that this is exactly what the Commission is suggesting with this Climate Social Fund, which is the new fund to be created by using those revenues from the ETS. So we exactly would like that money to be used in vulnerable households to help them do the renovations in order to fight energy poverty. So it's I think it goes exactly into the right direction, and the connection with renewable energy as well. So it's excellent to, good to hear that we have similar ideas, because I think, you in the cities, really what makes sense like in reality. And I think that's what is really so useful also for us as like, let's say, policymakers too.
What we tell in Antwerp is we like to renovate the houses of vulnerable groups instead of renovate streets after huge climate protest actions, because we don't want that. We want to avoid the les gilets jaunes de France.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Now I would like to continue actually with the same question, if I can ask the same question from you, Yann-Françoise of Paris. So indeed, I just repeat it. So it was about how this kind of integration of social and environmental efforts, help us achieve the climate neutrality targets. And have you noticed any trade-offs between energy or social objectives in this context? So how does that look like from a large city's point of view? Floor is yours.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me correctly and clearly. I'm very sorry there is a lot of noise around because I'm in the COP venue, and it's very hard to find a quiet place here. These negotiations and talk. And I'm very sorry, but I have to cut my camera because I have some disconnection. The connection is not so good, and I hope you can hear me also long. Sorry for that. So I would like to say that for the city of Paris, it's quite the same thing that for Thirdparty. I can share totally all the purpose of some news just before. But of course, for the city of Paris, I think now for any cities, we can tackle climate change without taking care about social equity. and we have to take care of that. Maybe when we began our climate action plan in 2007, we talk about a lot about mitigation, and maybe too lately about adaptation, and less about social inequity. But we do know that this transition can be brutal in some sector for our population. We do know that, for example, to buy an organic food is more expensive. To have a very wonderful new energy efficiency performance flat is more expensive than the conventional world, and so on and so on. But sometimes also you can create by your climate action plan some inequity. For one example, all cities test that during the 90s and beginning of the last century, when you want to create a new wonderful eco-district with high-level energy efficiency, performance, and so on, you have discovered that the price of the square meter will increase very high. And finally, low-income people can live here. So one of the solutions that the City of Paris decided when we create a new eco-district is to up the level of the percentage of social housing within the eco-district and around, and to retrofit also the street around. And for example, by the law in France is 20%, and we decided some case to go to 40, either to 60% to have the mix. That's very important thing of that. On the other side, we have seen that we want to decrease the part of cars in Paris, and for air quality, for improving and decreasing the GHG emissions. But it can also be unequal because some people need that car because they live in the suburb far away and they have to shift to a new car. So we try to create initiative. We try to improve public transportation with a regional level. So it's a dialogue because, as I said, everybody wants to avoid any, I'm sorry for the term now in English and in French, gilet jaune, yellow jacket, but we have to dialogue with everyone to make some brutal solutions socially acceptable and bad solutions. But I think that the current challenge for all of us currently is to tackle energy poverty in our climate change. And it's one of the connections between climate change, social equity, but also adaptations at different levels. And that's one of the main priorities now for the City of Paris, with the price of electricity and gas will increase in France and in Europe. It's a daily challenge, but we have to talk about also dignity. And sometimes it's very hard to see and to look after which people are close to vulnerability or close to energy poverty. Sometimes they don't know the different system of initiative and help that can exist around them. So we have to find another solution and to mix solidarity with climate actions. Climate actions is not only to earn gigawatt, but when you earn gigawatt, usually you decrease the impact on your bills. But as was said before, we have the main issue about the tenant, the owner of the flat and the buildings, and we have to find a solution about that. In France, for example, we create a new lines on the bill of the tenants that the owner can make him pay a part of the works, but we have to be sure that this part is no higher than all the energy gain he will have at term on the bill. That's on some little solutions we can find together, but we need to dialogue with all the different stakeholders to work together with social workers. It was not the case, for example, when I began to work 20 years ago about climate change issues. We never discussed with social workers. It's the case now for the last 7 years with all the stakeholders about the building retrofitting and so on to accelerate, but to take care of everyone, because I shared the purpose before. We mustn't leave anybody behind the line, and what's the main issue. And the other way about social equity is also to take care of the most vulnerable one during the stress period of climate change can occur in the city. And for example, for us, of course, it's the urban heat islands. Mm-hmm. And when you want to retrofit buildings, before we take care only from the thermal comfort in winter, now we have to take care about the summer, and we can have a double benefit if we did well. about that, to improve the energy efficiency, to decrease the impact of your burning island, to permit the people to live in normal condition of temperature, and to protect and to improve the health of the elders. That's very, very important for us. I do not know how many minutes you stay for me, but I can discuss along about that. But I hope there will be some question how to share. But as was says, all the network of from Covenant and KEC40 and so on is very important together to improve our knowledge, to share our fail, our success, to win time and to take care of everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jan-François. I think this was also, again, a good example of concrete issues that have been dealt with, that you are dealing with. And just to raise one of them, you mentioned the organic food example. That's a good example of the green premium that is there for on prices, normal products versus green or clean products. And that's something where we should indeed challenge the industry actually as well, to the private sector to reduce that premium, because that's so important if we want to have a large scale change of behavior. Very good. Thank you. I'm really glad to see that Mayor Alain Colliban has joined us from Brasov. I have already presented you here, introduced you in the meantime, and I understood you had indeed other meetings, so this is fully understood. I'm glad you made it. So
sorry for missing the first part of the meeting, and glad to be here.
No problem. There's still time indeed. So what I would do now, I will ask you a question about your activities, and if you could share with us some examples of how this kind of a peer support that you have in collective initiatives. So how has that concretely helped with new measures in your city towards climate neutrality, and have you had some type of barriers that you have bumped into when doing this? So that would be my question.
In order to answer, I would like to first to put it in the context, because I'm only 1 year in the office as a mayor, and this political change was also a change in direction for Brasov, because we used to be a city which was built and around the cars and encouraged a lot the mobility in terms of private cars, and right now we have a new ambition of becoming the green capital of Romania. And in order to achieve that, we are open, and we are like a student which is very open to learn things and to apply things and to pilot projects. And for us, it's further important in this context to be part of networks and to have opportunities for peer learning accessible for us. And I'm very happy we have partners. We are partners in projects with cities like Dresden, and we also are using our twin city network in order to exchange expertise and solutions for the challenges we're facing. This month I will be traveling to tour for exchange of experiences and projects that each of us are thinking to apply. We have launched an international event this autumn, in September. We hosted the Green Cities Forum in Romania, which was an international event highly appreciated by participants and by policymakers. And we wanted to turn it into an yearly event with the scope or with the main theme of making our cities more livable and greener and more compliant to anything that climate change is bringing us as a challenge. We are in the process of elaborating our sustainable energy and climate action plans. And from that perspective, I think we're in the avant-garde, in the first line of Romanian cities, because we also have signed our agreement and our commitment for becoming carbon neutral by 2050, and also the target for Fit for 55 by 2030. So we are ambitious, we are learning fast, and we have a large portfolio of projects for our community. I would name, because you asked about the barriers we are facing. I think the main barrier starting to a new path is changing the mentality, because each of us, when we are talking about principles and philosophy, each of us, we would like to have a greener city, a better quality of air, but when it turns into leaving our car at home and using public transportation, that's the first challenge, the first big challenge, and the first step we have to take. And we're working. We have a plan that is on multiple levels and areas, starting from mobility, going to energy efficiency, not only for public buildings, but also supporting the private buildings. So the renovation wave, it's something we were waiting for, and we're happy that it's happening. But also we are very concerned with the environment, and we're glad to have a very rich environment, a very rich natural environment surrounding Brasov. And we are in the process of establishing a natural park around Brasov, in the forests around Brasov, which would be 14,000 hectares, which is a large area of forests and mountains. And that would turn into Brasov into a major city, which is connected to a very large natural park. We have lots of ambitions, and we are glad to be part of networks and part of events like this one today, because this would be the best opportunity to discuss about challenges each of us are facing and the solutions that we can apply together.
Very good. Thank you very much for this presentation or these ideas. I think that you also put nicely into question the kind of stereotypes that sometimes come up by that, you know, it's just the Nordic cities who are super ambitious, and you go more to the south or to the east, then it gets always more diluted. But I think you are just proving that that is a very old-fashioned way of thinking. Good. We've done now the round of questions, and I was thinking that I understand there are some Slido questions here, so I suggest that we take these before we go further. So let's see, what do we have? Our speakers are, oh dear. Okay. All right. And well, there we have three questions. So if we take them in the order, so how do your national context impact your ability to learn from collective initiatives? I think in the interest of time, I will not ask all of you, but rather if there is a volunteer among us who would like to comment on that, question number one here.
I'd like to.
Okay, Tom.
Antwerp.
Go ahead.
Everyone knows that Antwerp is part of Belgium. Belgium, a complicated federal state. But so the simple answer on that question is, as long as we have the EU and we have cities that learn to know each other by EU-funded programs, then we only need our national governments or our regional governments to set up legislative frameworks, to set up or to change EU directives in national or regional legislation. But the lesson we've learned in Antwerp as a city that reached its Covenant of Mayor goal for 2020 is, as long as we have the EU, we fully trust in the EU to fund programs in which cities or urban regions can learn from each other and can share their ambitions, the barriers, the failures and the successes. So we don't have to bother a lot about national levels or member states. It's all in the EU and in the urban regions, I think.
Okay. Alan, did I see you also raising your hand?
I would like just to shortly add something to what Tom has said. I would not talk about particularly about the national context in terms of policies or political or legislation, but rather in terms of mentalities. And I think for us, it's very important to have access to solutions, to practical solutions, and to examples that we are not talking about abstract things. We are talking about concrete solutions and projects that can change communities into the better. So I think for us, it's very important to be part of these networks and to help our communities understand that we are fighting not for numbers. We're fighting for a better world and for better cities, for better life in the end. And we're doing it together.
Very good, thank you. Both very clear points. So now let's go to the second one. We have a moderator. Okay, yes, that's me. Why is it before the EC to support collective initiatives like the Covenant of Mayors? Well, I mean, I have, of course, a view on that, but maybe it's better that one of you says it. I'm biased.
I could jump in from the country that in theory isn't in the EU anymore, but is very, very European looking. It's really important from a Scottish context that the networks that connect the cities and the countries that are open and welcoming of all countries and cities, regardless of whether you're part of the EU or not, are supported. It's really important to be outward looking, to learn from others, to recognise that your problem is the same problem that other cities are facing, that Glasgow is probably very, very similar to a lot of Eastern European cities. It's very similar to a lot of the northern cities. And it shows a welcoming to learn from each other as well, I think. It's that openness and that looking outwards for solutions.
Very good. Thank you. And I can say that indeed, when it comes to the European Covenant of Mayors, so that is actually a bit more than EU, so from the start. So including Switzerland, for instance, and Norway and so on. So that puts it into a perspective which is a bit more than just the EU member states. And then the last one, I think it's obvious, this is to you, Julian. What about nature-based solutions and gentrification?
All right, I think I can answer it from my perspective, but I would reckon that Tom and Alan would probably have some comments as well. We talk about place, and that if you don't love a place, why would you fight for it? But that also means that you shouldn't not do something to a place to improve it just because it's being badged as gentrification. So why shouldn't our deprived communities or less affluent communities have the opportunity to live in a place that they value, in a space that makes them feel better, in a place that they feel comfortable and safe in, just because we have a fear that they're going to be moved out and somebody else is going to move in? We're not wanting them to move. We want to improve the place that they live in, with them still living there, and give them the opportunities to live a healthier life, to have a better opportunity to peer-to-peer support, learn from each other, learn from those that know, help themselves build their confidence. If we put nature-based solutions in properly, then we're looking at social cohesion, we're looking at health and well-being, we're looking at the economic opportunities, we're looking at the environment, and we're looking at the biodiversity all at the same time in the same place. It's really easy to find money and keep your fingers crossed that an affluent community will keep that standard of that environment, that place going. It's harder to work with those communities that don't have that skill set or that confidence or that resilience, but they deserve a great place and a more resilient place to live more than any others. So it's a little bit of Alan saying, you need to give people the opportunity, and Tom was saying as well, to change their behaviour, but you need to make that behavioural change equitable. And we shouldn't do something just because we have a fear that we're gentrifying. We should acknowledge that that is an issue and it might be a problem. And we should work with those communities to co-produce and co-develop the best place that they can have that will improve all of those different things. And that's a true nature-based solution. And it's why in Glasgow, we started talking about a place-based approach, using nature-based solutions to make for a climate adaptive city.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Julian. I don't know if you would briefly like to come in, Tom, before we move to the next item. Yep.
Yeah, very shortly. It's the less appealing part of climate policies, a kind of boring part of policies, but very important, that what vulnerable households need, what they deserve, is governments, city councils, landlords, financial sector, ESCOs that are designing on bill repayment schemes, third-party financing solutions in order to retrofit their houses and to get the thing done. And so it's a boring part of climate policy. It's far away from symbol actions of hydrogen buses or something like that. I have nothing against hydrogen buses, but we really need to do that part of the job too. So looking for other ways of financing the retrofitting of the building stock. That's really important.
True. Very good. Thank you. I suggest now that we take a last last question, which I would ask to all of you, to kind of like a closing, in the sense that we are heading here towards the holidays, towards the end of year holidays, Christmas and New Year and all that. So it's the time to expect some little presents, and then of course New Year's we give great New Year's resolutions about how we want to make things better the next year. So in that spirit, so what would each of you like to wish from the EU or your national government as support to what you're doing? So what would be on your sort of list for the Santa Claus? And I don't particularly mean that he uses Santa Claus, but you know what I mean. And then on the other hand, what would you be ready to sort of promise to your constituency or then to the lawmakers, that with your activity you will give to the common good in this work towards climate neutrality next year? So that would be my question to all of you. So perhaps, I don't know, would Tom, would you start now?
I'll start.
Still on the screen, so
I'll start. So I'll ask Santa Claus. I'll ask the EU and all the member states. Well, under the Christmas tree, I want to see a gift that's, in my opinion, is called a climate state. I'd like the EU and the member states to retrofit, to boost the social welfare states into climate states. And a climate state for me is a totally new way of distributing incomes, of course, equally distributing the incomes. And for me, that means, as we had a distribution of social contributions of employers and employees in the social welfare state, now we use, for example, the ETS scheme and the allowances, we use them to redistribute them immediately as a kind of a climate tax credit to the first parts or the lowest parts of the income groups. So I like the EU to design that kind of climate states. We can take some years for it, but it has to be a point on the horizon to end up with climate states that are retrofitted social welfare states. In return, as a local vice mayor, I promise the EU and the member states, well, a good glass of optimism, because I like to convince nation states, member states, the EU, that if you trust cities and city regions and city council people, we really can get the thing done together with our inhabitants. We have the scale, we have the ideas, and we have the enthusiasm to get things done. So at least keep us connected all together. But we, in return, I promise we can achieve our goals. No worry.
Thank you very much. That was a good start. Well, who wants to go next? I see Julian hand up.
I can.
Okay.
If you want.
Oh, Jan was coming in. Do you want me to go? And then you probably go to Jan. I'll go very quickly.
Sure. Yep.
I would say what I want to find under my Christmas tree is lots of digital maps and evidence and data. So I want to be able to ask the map, but not only do I want to be able to ask the map, but I want our citizens and our communities to be able to ask the map, to be able to say, I want to do, whether it is as an officer of the council or whether it's as a community, I want to plant a tree or I want to take over this bit of vacant derelict land, and I want the information to be there that allows me to either have the evidence to show why I would want to do that and apply for the funding, and then to build that evidence to show what I've achieved, or to learn from the failures as you go, because sometimes failures are good as well. Sometimes you have to be risk aware. So I'm going to have a second one as well as being able to ask the map. I want the EU and UK to be risk aware and willing to take the risk and not be risk averse when it comes to climate and when it comes to making a change. What we will promise you in return is that we will be able to tell you the stories of the people that live in those communities and how living in a great community makes you feel so much better, happier, healthier, and connected. And you can connect out, and those stories are absolutely amazing. If you want to look at stories that are there, we've just launched Every Tree Tells a Story on Twitter, where there's a brilliant video from one of our primary schools where they've taken the stories. But if you can connect to nature, you can connect backwards as well as forwards. And if you can connect to a place, you can connect to the stories of that place. And with those stories, you can make that place so much better.
Very good. Thank you. Jan, your turn.
I want to have all the gifts from the other colleagues for Christmas. One of the main gifts for me is from EU to have a very strong and affirmative regulation to retrofit maybe the 40% of the worst stock of building existing in Europe, and to develop all the mechanism to accompany the state and the local level and the city, of course, because usually the incentive from EU are stopping at the regional level to develop all this transition to accompany, of course, the local level, but the builders, the tenant, the owner, to have all the mechanisms, maybe redistribute, as I was said before, by the ETS funds. But we need a very long-term signal for industrial, for builders, for workers about the goal to retrofit so huge stock. It will be very helpful for creating local jobs, developing a new economy, and it will tackle energy poverty within our all cities in EU. And of course, from our side, our job, we will gonna to work with citizens, with associations at the local level to accompany this program, to develop this one, and to foster and accelerate the retrofitting of all the buildings. That's my main Christmas wish. Tell me it was not only a wish.
Yeah. No, that was a very clear one, and fits pretty well with the energy efficiency first principle that we have actually been making stronger also in this July package of proposals for law. Now, Mayor Caliban, you can crown the list now. I'd be curious to hear what you have in your mind.
I think Santa would have to have a very large sack in order to accommodate all the wishes. But I will start by being optimist and saying that Santa already, from a political point of view, Santa already brought us the gift that I was waiting for before going into politics, because I'm quite a new politician. I started my career in 2016 as a member of the Romanian Parliament, in charge with being a chairman of the Environmental Protection Committee. And at that point, anything concerning the environment and climate change was just a marginal subject on the political agenda. So I think Santa has already changed that in my country, because right now we're talking about Green Deal, about all the opportunities, about the sustainable energy and climate action plans, and these are all mainstream topics right now. So for us, this was very important to happen, and it happened. So thank you, Santa, in a virtual way. Now, discussing about the current challenges, there are plenty, and I would name a few. I was talking about the sustainable energy and climate action plans. We are working on it. We have a working group, and it would be great if we would keep be in touch with other parties with experience in this field, because we want not only to list some numbers, but to make those numbers relevant, and to make sure that those numbers are realistic in terms of the impact of each of our projects in our strategy would have on climate change and on energy efficiency. Next, by the end of the year, because you talked about Christmas and this overlaps in a bit somehow, we will finalize our plan for establishing and arranging new parks, and we are talking about almost 500,000 square meters in new parks in Brașov, which is the biggest project or initiative in this matter in the last 30 plus years. So I would like to be able to make it pass and to join the political forces to support this kind of initiative, because it's important for our communities. It helps us tackle the heat islands phenomena in our city. It would also help us improve the quality of air. So, and it's also one of the top priorities if we are asking the citizens of Brașov about projects of what they would like to see developed in the city in short term. And of course, we have lots of projects concerning mobility. By the end of the year, we're hoping to be able to submit for evaluation the metropolitan train, part of our transition to green of our public transportation system. So we would be probably the first city in Romania to have a metropolitan train system in place for local transportation. And hopefully this would be financed by the new RRF scheme at the national level. So I just named a few, and looking forward, I'm very optimistic for a great Christmas and for a rich Santa in terms of our goals and our projects. And I wish you all to have an equal or a great Christmas.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, indeed, for this, Mayor Caliban, for this these wishes. I think you kind of did my work to close the event already, so I can thank you for that as well. It's been really a great discussion we've had here. Even we were not face to face, we were kind of virtually face to face at least, and now we should go and have a chat and drinks and whatever to close it up. I don't use the 120 seconds left to summarize what we've discussed. I think we've done a lot of good things. Good ideas have come have been presented, and it shows that there's a lot of positive dynamics at the local level, and it's just what we need. That's what counts for any legislation actually to become reality. We know this is the way it's going to be measured, the success in the cities, and that's it. That's reality. So I want to wish you, thank you first of all wholeheartedly, our speakers, also the audience who made the questions. Thank you so much for your contributions. It's been really a pleasure to share something like this. I wish you the best of success with your continued work, and stay in touch through the covenant, through the different other initiatives as well, and we will then check where we are in a couple of years' time, and of course want to go always faster and faster, and take stock on how we are succeeding. So big thank you, and I wish you a good evening, I believe, for most of us, and enjoy the rest of the COP sessions organized by the EU or other ones. Thank you. Bye-bye.